Yay, I didn't forget. Are you good, Cecilia? You're on?
I'm on.
All right, let me find you so I can just, there you are. Awesome. All right. Well, it's 6:35. We'll go ahead and start the PTA business portion of tonight's meeting. And thank you to Heather and Kelly for being here as well. And Dr. Duran will be joining us at 7. And I wanted to welcome you all and happy fall. There will be a couple of links plopped into the chat in just a moment. They'll be helpful links, but I also wanted to walk you through them. So I'm on the SEPTA site right now. And if you want to follow at home, you could go to the tab next to the home tab, the programs tab. And you could click on monthly meeting. And then scroll down until you see today's date, October 26th. There is a copy of our agenda there for those of you at home. And a copy of the financial report. Let me double back 1 second. Just wanted to pull that up for you. And then a PDF of the slide deck for this evening as well. I'll be sharing my screen as well too. So that's awesome. Yeah, fun slides. Quick housekeeping as well. Quick housekeeping. So if you'd like to see the sign language interpreters more clearly during tonight's presentation, we suggest you switch to the side-by-side mode. However, I have spotlighted Morgan Lee is interpreting first. And then after about 20 minutes or so, they'll switch and you'll look for Victoria Oliar's picture. I'm sorry, Victoria. I tried to get it right. All right, so, and then closed caption is also on currently. All right. That is the bit of housekeeping. And we need to approve, let me start a new share. Hold on, let me stop. Minutes. I didn't do a poll for this. I didn't feel it was, whoops, that's the agenda. I clicked the wrong thing. Here are the minutes from September. I just need to get a verbal yay from the 3 of us here or nay to approve the meeting minutes from, why does it keep saying agenda? Is it hyperlinked to the wrong? It is the wrong hyperlink. Good to know. Stop share. I'm just going to shrink my screen real quick and go pull it up. Hopefully I have the, yes. Have a backup plan. Always good to have plan B, plan C. All right. Well, that looks like the meeting. Oh, no. Okay, here we go. So these are the minutes from September and officer reports. We voted on the budget to approve the budget. We talked about fundraising opportunities. We talked about Amazon Smile, Harris Teeter, what we're doing with advocacy, mini grants, so on and so on. So those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Right. And then I wanted to invite folks to perhaps, if they have fundraising sort of as their sort of day job or their profession, and they have some time that they'd like to volunteer, could use a couple of extra hands with the online auction, which will be coming up around Thanksgiving and then the Christmas time. And it's our biggest fundraiser of the year. You can do lots of last minute holiday shopping and get some great sporting event tickets and things of that nature. And we have already started working on pulling together donations, and I just need help to photograph and also to upload to the OWL bidding software program that we use. So anybody that is interested, please let me know. And also I'm looking for 1 or 2 people who could help me start working. I know it's far away, but SEPTA's awards ceremony, and it would be really lovely to have somebody step in and help me with that. Especially Maria has offered to continue to help, and she used to chair that, and so it'd be nice to just have that that sort of layover and have that added layer. So with that said, I am, let's see, going to pass it off. I don't know, is Greg here? Do not see Greg.
Do you want to just do a recap?
Yeah, but I didn't take a, I'll do a recap for Greg. Let me share. Thank you. Let me pull up the financials. All right, so this is a snapshot as of October 25th. It shows that we've had some movement on the local membership dues. So thank you to those that have gone online and paid their membership dues. It does show the Phantom Ball, which we will get into when we talk about other fundraising and mini grants. But Phantom Ball, we're about halfway through to where we had hoped budget-wise. However, as you'll hear from our mini grants chairs, we got a lot of interest this year, and so I'm sure it would be great if we could blow this out of the water and really provide teachers with the things that they need for their classrooms. The other line here you'll see is this marketplace and restaurant. That was from the Pupatella night. And then the last line is the sponsored membership. That's for teachers, for service providers, anybody, any aides that are working with your students. There is basically a fund that was started for them. So these are memberships that can be gifted to any service provider, any teacher who's working in the class with your kiddo. We did pay part of our Virginia PTA dues, so we're down to the expenses part. And MoneyMinder, that's what we use to keep track of all of the finances. We had $100 in supplies. I don't have any notes on that, so I'm assuming that's flyers or something. You can also see the promo materials fidgets. Those were from the beginning of the year. The parent liaisons kicked off and brought those back to school night. So that's that 516 line item. And mini grants was 160.63. That is year to date. Actually, this sum remains because there were two grants that did not actually follow through. So we decided to carry them over in case those teachers could make use of the grant that they received from last year. So that's what that is. And then you have down here in the PayPal clearing account, these get accrued because when we use PayPal on our memberships, a certain percentage gets kicked back because we are a nonprofit. So that's what that is. And so our ending total is $8,395.93. And so that is the treasurer's report vis-a-vis me. And I will stop share, and I see Melissa Wadman, if you are on and would like to turn your camera on or your microphone on and perhaps give us a mini grants update. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Jen, I'm in the car if you want to switch back to me.
Okay, no worries. Thanks so much. Okay, I guess it's me again. Fundraising. Fundraising, the Pupatella fundraiser was a great success, and we were able to get $375 from Pupatella from pizza sales. And I think it was a hit. I mean, I saw a lot of I saw a lot of friends and family there, and it was just nice to kind of run into people too and chat, and the restaurant couldn't have been lovelier and more helpful. And they said that we'd be welcome to do that anytime again. So yeah. And then the next fundraiser that we have is the Phantom Ball. It is an actual virtual ball. You don't need a ball gown. You can stay at home. You can get home from work and put your quitters on and just go right onto the SEPTA website. Cecilia, would you put a link, or could you please put a link to where they could see the Phantom Ball? Great. And essentially it's you buy a ticket or two, and you can all of the proceeds from that Phantom Ball are for our mini grants program. So they help us fund the important work that our teachers and service providers are doing in the schools with our students. That typically it's open now, and it runs through October 31st. And it's just a link, and you don't have to dress up. You don't have to go anywhere. You just fill out that information online. And let's see, it's almost 6:50. Let me see if I can spot Karen Peterson. Karen Peterson, would now be a good time?
Yep. No, I'm here. Thanks, Jen.
Wonderful.
I'm not gonna turn on my camera because I'm in the car, but I am here.
Wonderful. Karen is our chair of membership.
Yeah, so we wanted to give some membership updates, and we wanted to let you know, thank you so much for all the folks who have submitted their annual submission, their membership dues. We have now about maybe 77, 78 folks who have paid, and of that number, 10 have taken advantage of the teacher slash administrator sponsorship PTA membership. And we have over, I think, 1,000 people who are currently on our listserv, but we only have 71 people, or around 80 people total that have paid so far for membership. And we know there's been some confusion, and so we've got the website back up. You can go to the SEPTA website. You can click on, renew your membership. And also you can click on, we have kindly received donations to sponsor membership. So we don't want cost to be a prohibitor for anybody to be part of, official voting member of the SEPTA. So you can also encourage someone to put in for sponsorship of membership, and we can also sponsor teachers. So we wanted to put that plug out there that we know, not everybody might not know that every year sponsorship resets, and we just want to encourage you to pay those dues, because those dues goes forward and helps us, one, function as an official PTA that we have members, and that also funds our activities that we do, including what you've heard earlier about the mini grants, and also just future educational programming for us and for educators. So I think I've covered most of that. I'm sure Jenna let me know if I've missed something, but again, thank you all so much for considering membership to SEPTA. There is power in numbers, and we know that we can increase that number for this year. So thanks all.
Thank you so much for that update, Karen. Oh, and if Wendy Heiser would like to chime in, she's our advocacy committee chair.
Good evening, everybody. The advocacy committee has been busy. One thing that we did is we submitted public comments to the state regarding our concerns about the new draft regulations regarding treatment of transgender students in public schools. There is a disability angle to this, so we were able to weigh in on that. We will continue to monitor this situation at the state and the school division level, but overall, we are fortunate that APS leadership is supportive of students in this regard. So our advocacy is largely driven by community concerns, and this fall, we've heard the most concerns from the community in two areas: special education staffing and COVID safety. Regarding special education staffing, we've heard multiple concerns from both parents and staff. The parents are concerned about unfilled positions, and when you pull up the vacancies, you can in fact see that the remaining vacancies are disproportionately in special education roles. While we don't want to see shortages in any areas, these roles are particularly critical given the heightened needs of students with disabilities. And these vacancies can impact the delivery of mandated service hours, IEP service hours, and supports, particularly when subs are also part of the special education staffing concerns. From staff, we're hearing concerns about compensation and benefits that are not competitive with other offers, and treatment by human resources. So SEPTA and ASAC worked together to send a joint letter to APS leadership and the school board. And from here, ASAC is going to dig in deeper into this issue in a working group with the goal of developing recommendations to APS, which is in line with ASAC's mission as an advisory committee. Second, we are hearing from parents of children who are immunocompromised or who have disabilities or medical conditions that place them at higher risk for negative outcomes if they get COVID. And these concerns have heightened as APS has removed more of the COVID mitigation that these families were relying on for their children's safety, often quietly and without notice. Particular recent concerns, for example, are no longer is APS notifying school communities of cases and exposure to COVID positive classmates, many of whom come back to school still infectious when they return between days 5 and 10 of an illness. And this is a particular concern at lunchtime when masks are removed, especially as lunch is now again indoors at many schools. So while parents should be able to request and receive accommodations for basic safety, we're also hearing that parents don't know that they can ask. Staff are not aware of the process if they are approached. And when parents have managed to make it to an IEP or 504 meeting, pretty basic accommodations are being denied. And we're not talking here about requests for peer masking in a class. We're talking about, although that is an accommodation that may be available under the right circumstances, what we're hearing about are denials of pretty basic accommodations, such as notification of cases in a class. So SEPTA has put out information to the community, and in some cases we have heard that this is actually the only way that parents are aware that they can even get these accommodations. It shouldn't be that way, but that at least we have been able to provide some information, but I don't think it's reaching enough parents. We've sent communications to APS with these concerns. At this point, we'd really like to hear from parents who are continuing to experience these problems so that we have full information. Again, our advocacy is always driven by what we hear from the community. You can reach us via the community input form on the website with this or any other concern that might be coming up. I'll drop a link into the tab. And finally, I want to say that an ongoing project is the goal and accommodation bank that we are working to build. And again, we ask for the community's help to build this resource because we need real life examples. From the point is to build a resource of anonymously a resource of actual goals and accommodations that are in students' IEPs and 504 plans in APS. And in order to be a valuable and robust resource, we need your help. So that is the update. I will put the link into the chat.
Thank you for all your work on that, Wendy. It's time to have our interpreters switch. So we'll pause for just a minute and can you make Victoria? Yeah, perfect. Wonderful. All set? Okay, perfect. If let's see, I spy in one of these little boxes. Melissa, can I double back to you for a little briefing on mini grants?
Absolutely. Sorry.
Thank you.
So we had an unprecedented, I've done this for a few years now. I've been chairing the mini grant committee and was a member of the committee before that. Amount of requests this year, we had over $32,000 worth of requests. And I think there's about 8,500, if I'm remembering correctly, budgeted to be allotted. So we had a lot of requests. Mainly, I looked through for trends and we had a lot of sensory information materials being requested, wobble seats, things like that. A lot of field trip funding requested for. I'm trying to think the other things. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. So we are in the process. Jana Dressel and I are co-chairing, and we're in the process. We met with the committee. We've made our decisions, what we think should happen for all of the proposals. But at the same time, we have created or are in the process of creating an Amazon wish list to try to help raise funds, additional funds for a lot of the items that are on Amazon, including a lot of these sensory materials. So we haven't let everyone know yet who has been funded by the mini grant pool of money yet, or not, as we're in the process of trying to raise other funds. Is that, Jen, is there more information that you think should be shared?
No, that's it. And go to the website and fill out the Phantom Ball ticket RSVP so we can get there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Cecilia, do you want to give an update on Espacio Hispano?
Sure.
Turn your volume off of that because the speaker is there. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, just quickly to say thank you to our now 6 volunteers who have stepped up, and we've had an initial meeting, brainstorming, advocacy, outreach, programming to really make sure that the SEPTA membership represents the diversity, is reaching the Latino community, Spanish-speaking community, and addressing the needs. So thank you to Melissa and Lana, Leonardo, Christina, Mauricio, and Arlen. Will be coming, announcing more of the initiatives and ideas probably to be implemented in the spring, since we're really reinvigorating this this part of SEPTA. So thanks to all our volunteers.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, it's incredible. It's so awesome that so many new faces have joined. I'm sharing a little bit for the last piece on the agenda, doubling back to the parent liaison coordinator, just double checking to see whether or not Kristen Gillig is on. She wasn't sure she was going to make it. I don't see her. Okay, the nuts and bolts of what you need to know from the parent liaison purview is we still have openings. We still have parent liaison openings. So that list includes Little Beginnings, the PIP program, Carlin Springs, Claremont, Drew, Fleet, Glebe, Oak Ridge, Taylor, HB Woodlawn, Langston High School Continuation Program, and New Directions Alternative High School. So if anybody has thoughts or thinks of a really great liaison that might be good for it, please let us know, or please have them reach out to us. And I think we have gotten through the whole agenda, and it's 7:02. Look at that for timing. Yay. All right, well, first, we're super happy and so thankful to Dr. Duran and the Office of Special Education team and the Parent Resource Center for everything they have done. They've done an amazing job, and these sort of last 2 unpredictable years have been unpredictable, I bet. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up the slide deck. But Dr. Duran, if you're there, I'd like to welcome you.
Thank you. I am here. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And I know I saw Kelly and I saw Heather a bit earlier. Don't know if they've rejoined. There they are. Hello, welcome. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now, and a little bit of housekeeping as well at first as I pull up the slide deck. All right. I wanted to provide some topics just so that as folks at home are sort of digesting this or listening, they'll kind of know what's down the pipeline as far as the way the evening will progress with our super team chat. So that if you do have questions, let's say we're on data and staffing here at the beginning, maybe you have some sort of question about summer school that you want to be jotting down. You can jot that in the chat box. So this is just sort of a brief sort of outline of what we'll be learning about. tonight. So without further ado, I will just jump right in. And the first question about data is a two-part question. Well, actually, it's three parts. Are statistics or raw numbers publicly available regarding A, the number of 504s, IEPs in a specific school, and the percentage of children who applied via child find but were denied 504s or IEPs per school? And if not, can APS make this data available on the APS website?
Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me here to answer some questions, and Heather and Kelly are here also to help me with some of the questions, and so we're happy to respond to them. The first question about the data, there is actually a lot of that data, I think almost all of it, Heather and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think almost all of what you asked is actually available on our VDOE site under virginia.gov as statistics reports, and we can get that to you, the actual link, so you could share with everyone with the steps. But there, when you go on that link on the Virginia DOE site, there's actually the fall membership report or the special ed count. Those are what it's called on there. And you can look at the report by a specific school. You can look at it by the whole school division. You can look at the state, obviously, but then you can mirror it down to select the school you want to see for most of that information on the special ed child count or the fall membership report. So that is available that way. And Heather and Kelly, I don't know, do we have that link anywhere on our own website? Or if not, maybe you can help share to get that link to SEPTA to make sure they can share that out.
Yeah, I don't think it's currently on our website, but we certainly can share out the directions, and anyone who wants to go to VDOE can run that report on the students with disabilities in Arlington, and it breaks it down by school.
And maybe it'd be a good idea, since we're being asked, to maybe we could put the link on your page somewhere with the directions, so that it's not, just on our APS website, but it connects to the VDOE.
Sure thing.
Okay, thank you. That would be helpful. Okay. So the next question is regarding staff. What measures are being taken to retain the current specialists, OT, PT, SLP, TVI, etc., and fill the vacant positions given the high rate of declined offers? The second part of that question, does APS plan to provide hiring incentives to new special education teachers, including salaries at or above what is offered by surrounding counties and signing bonuses?
So first, on the second part, we do currently, what we have is that we do provide for special ed teachers additional steps on the salary scale. We are continually looking to see how we can revise. As you know, last year I put a big emphasis in the budget on the comp study to try and raise up our teacher salaries to get us at least in the top 3. And we're going to continue that as part of our school board direction to me. And then, yes, we're definitely looking at, we have new leadership in HR who are exploring different other potential opportunities and incentives for what we can do to hire new special ed teachers. The first part, maybe Heather Kelly, you can talk a little bit about some of the work that your office has been doing with regards to some of the workloads I know that you've been working on, and then also making sure your office is working with HR to think better about how we think of compensation for some of those support specialist positions. If you can give a little bit of overview on that, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. We took the approach to look at workload versus caseload this past year during the budget season, and to think about all of the responsibilities that our related service providers have that are regarding assessment and report writing and providing service and consultation. So we have made a lot of gains in reducing workload for our related service providers, and we will continue to work with them to make sure that they have a manageable caseload to represent that workload and to have a healthy work-life balance.
But I think to your question, though, this is definitely an area that we've not completely finished all the things we can do to recruit and retain staff. And so it's something I've asked our new assistant superintendent of HR, and we have a new actually director of our instructional side of HR, Paige, to try and look at some other ideas and options and bring those to me and bring forward, particularly as we're entering the budget process.
Thank you very much. All right, the next question is regarding professional development. Is APS going to require general education teachers to take any training related to the instruction of students with disabilities? It's a question about mandatory training, not offering optional training.
So right now, as you may be aware, the only mandatory training is Accessibility 101, something that all staff have to do. In terms of our general ed staff, we currently don't have mandatory training specifically for that. We are looking at that, but what we have been doing is making sure that with our new rollout of the curriculum, we just adopted some new math resources. We've adopted some new CKLA, you may have heard at the elementary level, our science of reading. Part of that professional development and working through that process is to ensure for general ed teachers to know how to use those resources to make sure that they're differentiating for students with disabilities and making sure that they know what resources are available. A big part of the adoption process when our Office of Academics undertook the opportunity to go out for bids for different resources was to make sure that we had that as a component for any new materials, any new resources, that there must be opportunities for differentiation for students with disabilities. So while not directly a mandatory training solely on that, it is something we're trying to include more and more in all of the instructional professional development that we are requiring for new materials, new resources. And that's primarily obviously focused in math and literacy right now.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question is, can there be a provided list of the mandatory professional development that staff are required? Like you know, I know you mentioned Accessibility 101, but can that be transparent so that it's out and all families can know what professional development?
Yeah, I'm sure we can work on getting that. I'm not sure how, I didn't know if it was publicly available or not. Right now, how it is for each of the job types, whether you're an assistant, whether you're a principal, a teacher, depending on what grade level you teach, there is a list of required job requirements that they have that are individually in their in our computer system where they have to log in. So they're so varied and so specific to those grade levels. I suppose, yeah, I'm sure we can get together and get a list to share that. Right now, it's not publicly out there, I don't think, because it's really tailored when the staff members log in to understand which requirements are there. Our professional learning office, human resources, tailors all those professional learning requirements by job type, by department, and so it's pretty vast. But I'm sure we could probably work on how we can share that more broadly to be more transparent. It's just not right now on any website that I believe. Anyway.
Okay, that would be great. Moving along to parent participation. Parent participation is crucial, and the school district says it supports it strongly. However, in reality, our participation is pushed away in many ways in the special education world. How can APS do better to ensure that parent input is implemented, or at least inform stakeholders why decisions made do not reflect their input?
I definitely think we can do much better in ensuring that we have consistency around this, because I know some schools do a very good job of it and some do not. So one thing, and Heather and Kelly, you can comment more if you'd like in some of the details, but I know one thing, the Office of Special Education has been continuing to work with our principals, our assistant principals. We now have monthly meetings where they come together for the whole day, really stressing about how this is an important element of making sure that we're doing everything through the special ed process and beyond that, not just special ed process, but in general for all parents, to making sure that those decisions are made at the school level. At the division level, what we try to do is in really thinking about like our policy review process, and I'm very appreciative to the feedback we get from the policy reviews. We often get the most detailed and thorough reviews and policy changes from our parents in the special education world. So that's very appreciative. I want to first thank you for that, because so anyhow, my point is trying to put measures out there where we are being clear on what our decisions that are being thought of around policy, around initiatives, getting that feedback through the Engage system. And we really look at those carefully and we review them. I've shared with this year for the first time, we have a new full-time person who's focused on policies. And so previously we had a part-time person hourly. And so my concern that I had shared with him is when we're getting a lot of feedback from parent groups around those policies, we often don't give feedback back in terms of why something wasn't included or was it reviewed. So that's something that I've asked him to work more carefully on. Again, that's more at the division level. But Heather and Kelly, do you want to talk, can you talk a little bit about some of what you've been working with your office to support schools and the staff that are supporting schools around that parent input piece? I know that's been part of the professional learning that you've been trying to work on this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a critical piece and really important to us. And, you know, we are working hard to message that parents are an integral part of the IEP team. They are part of the team. And if there are certain requests that the parents want considered and the school team is not in agreement, we ask that the school team explain why, you know, they are not in agreement. And we very much encourage parents to let us know if things aren't going well. It's hard for us to address particular concerns when we don't know where there are trends. So, you know, whether they want to reach out to the Parent Resource Center or to someone in our office or work with their their student support coordinator, we really want to make sure they have options to let us know when things aren't working.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. This is also under the parent participation label. Schools within APS are notorious for not providing the support that students with disabilities need, and in many cases, not following minimal legal requirements or APS policy regarding IEP development, inclusion, discipline, or restraint and seclusion. A, why is this type of disparity allowed to persist in APS? B, are you doing anything to fix this well-known problem? And C, what should parents do when they encounter this type of resistance from their school?
Well, first,
can I pause for just 1 minute and switch Victoria and Morgan, our interpreters? Okay, thank you.
some water.
Morgan, are you all set? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Sorry, Dr. Duran.
Give me a chance to drink some water. So first and foremost, why is this? I think the first part was, why is this allowed? This absolutely should not be allowed. And this is a big concern and major issue of mine, that this type of inconsistency does not take place across our school system. It's something that we are really focused on. And as I said, through bringing our principals together, I know Heather and Kelly bringing special ed staff together to really, really double down on this as a concern, because this should not ever be happening. And so what we're trying to do is to, one, set the expectation very high and very clear, and the message very clear about that. Number two, to understand, why is this happening? What are there something that we're not sure of? Is there information that's needed? Is there a resource issue? Or, you know, what is really the root cause of what's happening in this area? At the end of the day, this, again, if there are instances where this is happening, what can parents do? They can reach out to the Office of Special Ed. We have our Parent Resource Center, which is a very great opportunity for families. And I encourage any family with a question or a concern to reach out to them. Obviously, first go to the school and the principal and try and understand what's happening there. But sometimes I know families may not feel comfortable because they're seeing that the school is not supporting them perhaps, or they're feeling that, their voice isn't heard at that level. And so if they're not comfortable going, I encourage you to go to the principal first and foremost to try and see if they can resolve what the situation is. I have found, and I've been involved recently with a couple of situations like this where the parent had not gone to the principal. When we involved the principal, they didn't even know this was happening. And so there was an immediate resolve there. There was another case where the parent did not feel comfortable because they felt retaliation and fear. So I know that happens sometimes. And so I would say the PRC is another good resource for that. But this is very concerning to me. And I know Heather and Kelly as well, but it's an area that we have to continue to educate, to better understand, and to, when things do happen, make sure that our parents get quick, immediate response and support from the PRC or from Office of Special Education.
Thank you.
Jen, there's a follow-up question on this.
Yeah.
So we have in the chat, while we're on the topic,
Yes.
how are schools held accountable for any failure to implement or provide accommodations, implementation of the IEP in these areas?
So again, it depends on what those issues are, but we certainly will deal with, number one, if it's a staff, the principal will have a meeting with the staff member to document, understand, support them, figure out what's going on, but then hold people accountable where this doesn't matter. Sometimes it will involve personnel. A few times it's involved some personnel actions that have taken place through HR becoming involved. But again, first and foremost, when things like this are happening, we want to know what is going on and what supports do we need. Is this something that the staff member or members who are involved in are just overwhelmed, need extra support, the caseload, as we talked about earlier, or is it something that they're just not following and being neglectful and not doing what's expected of them? So that there's one of those two tracks. One, is it just the support needed, the misunderstanding, the lack of awareness, the not being clear? And if that's the case, then Heather and Kelly and their team can step in and support that. Or is it something that is clearly a neglectful, not doing their job, and it's not about those other issues? So then there is a human resource process that we go through and have gone through in a couple of situations where we identified that as an issue. Heather and Kelly, do you want to add anything else? I know your offices work more closely when these issues come up, and I know parents have reached out to you directly, and you maybe have some more examples. That I was just sharing more generally what I know, but you have the very direct knowledge.
I would just like to reiterate that we can't intervene if we don't know. And we need to know if there are problems at a specific school or with a specific person. It's always great to go to the PRC if you are comfortable telling Kathleen or Gina and the PRC, like, it's okay to talk to Heather and Kelly about this and disclose the school. It's very, very helpful for us. We don't know how we can help unless we know specifically what the issue is and where the issue is occurring. So we just want to reiterate that it's a safe space for people to come to us, and there's no retaliation on our part. We want to help and support as much as possible. So feel free to talk to us or to talk to the PRC and allow us the opportunity to intervene in situations that need our attention.
Okay, great. Thank you. This question is under actually academics. Why aren't reading and math specialists allowed to work with students with IEPs? One of many examples, when my son, who has a disability, was in elementary school, I asked many times for the reading and math specialist to work with him. We were told that he has a SPED teacher, so the specialists are not for him. But his self-contained class only had one SPED teacher with 2 assistants for 6 to 12 kids, all with different needs, making it hard for the teacher to provide differentiated instruction to each student. and he could have benefited from working with the reading and math specialist.
Well, I'll ask Heather and Kelly to help me on this one with some additional information, but from generally a reading and math specialist can work with a student with an IEP, and oftentimes, and I know many cases where they do, so I don't know if this is a situation of their schedule maybe, or something else that I'm not aware of, or in a situation where, again, as I said earlier, there was not a clear knowledge of what can be done. And we do find that sometimes, but I know under the consultation of their case carrier, they can do that. And I know some do that. So Kelly, do you want to add any more to that? Something that may be a thing here?
Yeah, I think this is a complex question. They absolutely can, as Dr. Duran said, under the consultation of a case carrier, but there are many things that impact this situation: staffing, scheduling. A lot of times our reading and math specialists help our teachers indirectly and behind the scenes. They attend the collaborative learning sessions, they provide coaching, they provide planning. So a lot of times they are helping, but maybe parents aren't aware of that. So, but we do have several different examples of where a reading specialist or a math coach might be working with a student with an IEP to help support some of their services.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Question number 8, what is APS doing to address low test scores and learning loss for students with disabilities?
So one, the very important part of this is that our IEP teams are looking closely at individual students to understand what is their learning loss, what are those needs, so that we can, one, make sure that we are addressing that. Two, we are putting in a lot more, as I said earlier, for all students, some very more specific curriculum and resources, and really trying to get back to the basics in a way of ensuring that we're focusing on math and literacy as our goal for the whole system. Knowing when we think about learning loss, and we talk about learning loss in general, that is something that we have to dig deeper in, because each student might be very different. For example, we see some of our students with disabilities who maybe they're duly identified as an English learner. Then we look at some of their issues and needs. We're just looking at some data like this earlier today, where we were seeing that many of those students, it was their academic vocabulary that they were missing, and the fact that they were not in person with other peers. So we need to then address and make sure we're providing more support for them to be in class, in the tier, the core instruction, not being pulled out with other English-speaking peers, so they support them through the academic language development. So it's getting down to that granular level of looking at what is needed, what are the supports, what are the areas of loss for students. Some students did much better in other areas, not in some. So really going deeply at figuring that out at the IEP team level for students with disabilities, but then in general for all of our students, how are we making sure that our class time is really dedicated to, one thing I've shared with the principals over and over again, and we've been working on this year, is helping to make sure students are in the classroom more for that instruction. And then when they need those additional supports, can get it outside of that, but not taking them away from the core instruction of the areas where they've had loss. That's just doubling the loss then when we're pulling them out to try and provide interventions or supports. So it's really being very laser focused and figuring out what are the needs for those students, where are the areas of instruction that are happening, and making sure we're not making it even worse by creating what we think might be an intervention for students that is actually a doubling of their loss.
Okay, great. And to follow up on number 9, can you please provide an update on the current status of APS's efforts with the virtual learning program, including specifics on how students with disabilities with medical exemptions are being instructed and supported this year, and the work of the virtual learning task force and working groups future planning? What will all this mean for Arlington students with disabilities in the 23-24 school year who wish to enroll in virtual learning?
So currently, the students that are involved in virtual learning, which are the students medically fragile that had documentation, I believe there's about approximately 30 of them. They're receiving instruction through Virtual Virginia, and we've assigned them an APS special education teacher to support them by adapting some of the assignments they receive, checking in on them, tracking their progress, monitoring the IEP goals, and making sure that they, again, are not getting lost through the Virtual Virginia process, which can be very great for students who are independent and don't have any other learning issues. But for a child who is not able to independently just, receive that instruction, they need that additional support. And that's why what we did put in place for special ed, and for those that are English learner, teachers to monitor them. They call them mentors in the Virtual Virginia world, but they're APS teachers. Beyond that, there's a task force, as you mentioned, that has been working. They had their, I think it was their third meeting on several meetings, but last night they had a meeting. They have not shared with me yet their final recommendations. We have a work session on December, I think it's 13th or 16th, off the top of my head, sometime in the middle of December. We have a work session where the task force will be making recommendations to me to take to the board to see what will happen moving forward with regards to virtual learning for next year. I think you asked about what it would mean for the 23-24 year. So that's still something that's in the works to this task force. But again, the completion of recommendations so that we'll know more definitively about what's happening and how we're moving forward will be brought forth at the December work session.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. There are no middle school options within APS for students who benefit from a smaller educational setting and or project-based learners. This particularly affects non-traditional learners and students with disabilities. APS offers alternative education options at the high school level, Arlington Tech and Langston, but there is nothing at the middle school level, except possibly HB Woodlawn, but that is not available unless you win the lottery. Students either need to struggle through the 90-minute block schedule, traditional academic learning setting in our large middle schools, or leave APS. Are you aware of this issue, and how do you plan to address these inequities?
Yes, we are aware of this issue. And maybe Heather, you can speak to some of the work you're doing with the IPP, our process where we look at current programs and determine what programs might be needed, additional supports, particularly at the middle school level, as you said, where there is really the most need, I believe, for this concern. Heather, you can talk a little bit about what that ongoing discussions have been and some of the thinking and next steps for that.
Absolutely. So we do have a number of options at the high school level. We do not have small learning environments at the middle school level. We also do not have anything beyond interlude for therapeutic options. We have been in discussions with planning and evaluation and school support to think about what would be our ideal option for students who need something different than the comprehensive middle school. And those conversations are ongoing as we work through the IPP process and the budget process and looking at locations. Those things are all being considered. I cannot commit that there would be anything in place immediately or even next year, but we do understand the need for middle school students to have an alternative. And I believe that everyone who's been part of the discussion has been supportive of it. It's just working through the planning and the evaluation of how that might work.
Great, thank you. This next one, I'll read it, but then I'll give a little synopsis. My son is heading to middle school next year. We have a choice of schools. How can we learn more about the different special education options to help us make our decision? SEPTA is reaching out to link this parent with their school liaison and their student support coordinator. So I don't know if you have anything to add, though.
Yeah, well, one thing, we do have our upcoming middle school information nights that are also virtual and they'll be recorded. So there's some information about the general level, the district level, and then individual schools are having information nights for rising middle school students. I also know that as a part of the process for students with disability, that the IEP team helps with transitioning meetings to help families consider what are the best options. So that's another great resource. But I'd encourage families or anyone to look at our options and transfers webpage. It has a lot of information about, actually it has all the information for the information sessions and what dates they are and the time and how to access that information, because you can learn a whole lot, I believe, there and get to talk to the principals and see what's happening in the schools and find the best place from the parent perspective. But then looking at overall, having the IEP team assist with some of the transition to what might be best next.
Okay, great. The next question is, what is APS doing to bolster the support, i.e. funding, staffing, programming for the community-based education for students in the Program for Employment Preparedness, the PEP program?
So currently we have about 70 students in that program. And one thing that we're really excited about, I'm really excited about tomorrow, is our Arlington Career Center project, because it's going to really bolster, I believe, the programming, the opportunities for students there to have a facility that's similar to our other high schools, and actually some classroom spaces that are specifically designed to support that program in the new phase. Also, I think another important part is the funding and the staffing. I'm very committed to making sure we have that in our budget each year. We meet with the principal, Margaret Chung, to understand what are some of the concerns and needs. Last year, there was, I believe, some question about or some support for a coordinator. We put in additional staffing to help her with that. So it's something that we work closely with the principal on around the immediate needs, the immediate staffing, and then long-term, I'm excited about the programming enhancements that are going to be available through the Career Center project.
If I could add, thanks
Sure.
for that information. That's exciting to hear about the facilities. If you could provide a little more details specifically about the support for the community-based education piece.
Sure.
That was a focus from this question provider.
Heather, can you provide a little bit more detail on some of the work that you do in supporting that program?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So as Dr. Duran stated, we have 70 plus students in the PEP program right now, which is the largest number of students in that program since its inception. We, of course, staff it accordingly. We have a couple of factors that have sort of limited the availability for new students this year. We did have students who are in the PEP program that require recovery services, which limited the available spots for new students to enroll in the PEP program. Physical space is a barrier currently. And due to COVID, we did lose a number of internship sites. So as we recover from COVID, as people feel more comfortable having students doing internships in their businesses, we will have more opportunity to provide that community-based support. We're also recognizing that it can't only be PEP that's providing that community-based instruction. So we're really working hard with our comprehensive high schools and with Shriver to make sure that people are well equipped to work on vocational skills, to work on community-based instruction, to have internships for students across the school division so that students aren't limited if they are not able to attend PEP. And this has been an ongoing discussion. We've been working very hard with our team, with our behavior specialists, our autism specialists, with all the administrators to sort of build up those resources at all the sites so that we can provide that for every student who requires it.
Thank you, Heather. And thanks for the additional clarifications. I didn't answer the whole part of the question.
Thank you both.
And one last follow-up, sorry, taking
Sure.
advantage, we're on the topic,
Please do.
is if there is built-in funding specifically for the community-based instruction. So what are the resources that are specifically allocated for that piece? And this is coming from the perspective that the mini grants committee received many requests for community-based instruction funding.
Heather, do you know that detail of what's in the budget specifically? That I know the overall budget for PEP, but I don't know how specifically it's outlined as was just asked.
I don't know the specific answer to that question. I can tell you that we get requests in our office for very specific student individual requirements, equipment, devices, different things that they need. As far as an overall arching community-based instruction funding, that has not surfaced in our office. We really are purchasing things for each individual student as they come to us as they are needed. So if there is a need for additional community-based instructional funding, we are happy to explore that. It just has not come to our office at this time.
Thank you, Heather.
We're gonna pause real quick and do an ASL interpreter switch. So take a sip of water, everyone. Okay, are you all set, Victoria? Awesome, thank you. Oh, this is a fun slide. Summer school, what are you going to do to improve summer school instruction for students with disabilities? One example of many. Every year, I ask myself if I should put my son in summer school. Many times it is confusing and disconnected for parents and even more confusing and damaging to the students. Seems like summer school teachers do not have time to read their IEPs or notes from the students' classroom teachers. My son's 4th grade summer school SPED teacher taught him his ABCs, even though he passed the SOL in 3rd grade. Do you find this acceptable?
Given that example, no, I do not find that acceptable, because summer school is supposed to be one, reinforcing some skills that students are lacking, providing them additional support and building up the foundation for the next year. And in some cases, and something we haven't done so well recently, is giving some enrichment opportunities for kids to be excited about learning too. So if a child is being taught something they already know and had already passed in the SOL in 3rd grade, absolutely that's not acceptable. Some of the things that we're doing is we're really trying to think about, we did it last year, a revision of what summer school looked like. I think that we have some takeaways from that. We still need to look at in terms of, 1, who was eligible to attend, 2, what was offered in terms of the instruction. And it was very, very scripted last year in a way that said for each grade and each content, this is what you should be teaching. But that's not getting at individual needs of students. And so we're having to really think about, what is the curriculum being offered? How are we providing that? So we have a new summer school coordinator that started, I believe, in September. And our new chief academic officer, I actually charged them with bringing forth some new ideas. We have a upcoming monitoring report at the school board in November. I think it's the November 10th board meeting, where summer school recommendations are going to be made to the board and the public about what are some changes that could happen. Heather and Kelly, do you have anything else to add as you're part of the Office of Academics? I know that is reviewing summer school opportunities, and some of the, particularly the part of the question, I think, which is a concern to me, is how we can better have collaboration among staff working with the students during the school year, and then anyone who's hired to teach in the summer, because that is not acceptable in that example of what was described to us if a student has experienced that.
Certainly, Dr. Duran, we completely agree that that particular example is completely unacceptable. And we very much heard some feedback both from staff and parents about what worked and what isn't working. And we're working closely right now with the summer school office as well as the Office of Academics to really take a look at, what is the difference between extended school year and summer school? What are the different, extended school year is really a separate entity from our summer school program that is available to all students who meet that criteria. So really trying to make sure that both our schools and our families have a clear understanding of the differences and the criteria and what is going to be best for the students and really making those determinations. So we're working hard to try to make improvements on that.
A follow-up question related to summer school. Will students have to qualify in both reading and math in order to enroll in summer school? Many students needed it in the past summer for one subject area, but not in the other, and were therefore unable to enroll.
That is one of the areas I asked our team to really look at and the best practices for that. So that decision has not yet been made for next year. But again, that's something we'll be sharing in November as we finalize what the budget will look like for that. But that is an area of concern because again, summer school should be able to help students that have needs that are going to set them back from being able to be successful in the upcoming year, whether that's in one grade or another, a content or another. We really need to look at better practices for that.
Okay, thank you. Mental health. What is being done to provide education and support to school staff in helping families experiencing school refusal, anxiety-based school avoidance? I understand from other parents and school counselors that this is affecting a significant and increasing number of students at APS. Yet when I asked our school student support coordinator what other schools were doing, I was told to search the APS website, which contains one video recording of a 2019 presentation from Dr. Dalton. The Parent Resource Center also had no additional resources.
So what we're working on, what we're doing in this area is our school psychologists and social workers are working with school teams to make sure that they're providing support for individual students who are identified with school refusal or anxiety or any of those matters. That is something that is, should be referred to the school team and the psychologist and social worker to work individually. More broadly, though, our Office of School Climate and Culture, which used to be the Office of Administrative Services, we reimagined that office, and their charge is to really begin to look at teaching, providing professional learning for all staff around restorative practices. And people sometimes hear the word restorative practices and think that's after a child gets in trouble, we're trying to bring restorative conversations. That's only about 20% of the work. 80% of the work in terms of restorative practices, it's a new framework to APS, but it's something that's not new to education. It is 80% of that focus is really trying to create conditions, understanding, awareness, strategies, interventions, and practices for all staff when they're identifying students who are struggling in these areas of mental health, making sure we're providing support for them in a way that is an environment, one, that's conducive to help them, and then two, when they need that additional support, that they have those social workers and psychologists to work more closely with them when those needs arise.
Okay, thank you. This also dovetails with this mental health topic. What resources are available to provide social emotional support to students with disabilities? And then the second part of that is what resources are provided to staff to help children cultivate their social emotional well-being?
I'll take the second one first, because the staff, our school counselors and our counselor department, they help develop regular social emotional learning lessons, and they're providing those to teachers so that they can implement those. Some teachers use them, some create their own, but we are basically trying to have a set of resources similar to like we have our math and literacy curriculum, a curriculum around social emotional learning that teachers and staff can implement and work with students on, and then their own receive professional development. The first part of your question, I believe, was around the resources available. I know that's Heather and Kelly, can you share a little bit of specifics? I know that's determined by the IEP team and they do look at what are the supports needed, but I think if you can share some specific examples of some of those, that would be helpful. What the IEP team would determine when there is a need for social emotional support, specifically with a student individually.
Sure. Like, if an IEP team is addressing social emotional needs of a student, they would start with the present levels of performance. They would look at the student's needs and strengths. Then they would move forward to look at what sort of accommodations and goals might be appropriate to support that student. What do they need to feel, well enough in class to be able to participate as far as accommodations, and what skills do they need to work on as far as coping. And then they would write a goal related to the coping skills. Students who require counseling as a related service would be considered to have that provided by a clinical staff within the school, whether it be a social worker, psychologist within their school, and they would receive that counseling. That counselor would relay to the rest of the staff the appropriate responses for the students if they are experiencing challenges within the classroom. We have a number of resources that we have provided to all of our schools around social emotional support. We do lunch bunch activities. We provide social skills instruction. Some of our classes, some of our secondary schools have social skills classes that students can participate in. But overall, it's very individualized to each student. We know that there is tier 1 social emotional support in place at all of our schools. When we're looking at tier 2, tier 3 with an IEP, there's a variety of tools that we have at our availability that would be individualized to that student.
Okay, thank you. And then this next question, how does APS plan to address the social emotional impact of children being asked to attend multiple months of school without the support required by their IEPs due to unfilled special education vacancies?
Well, a couple of things. One, again, thinking about the individual students, the IEP team will be charged to really, and have been asked to look at those students who've had vacancies and understand, one, is there any immediate supports that could be provided by social workers, psychologists, but longer, is there any learning issues and needs that are taking place, looking at the data and looking at things like comp services, compensatory services, what other additional interventions might need to be put in place. So IEP teams will be looking at the data and discussing what those options would be for those students in those situations.
One follow-up question under this theme of social emotional support. In what way is APS helping to integrate students with disabilities to be more accepted in the general education setting? How is APS teaching students in the general education setting to relate to students with disabilities? Historically, this has been the seed of bullying problems.
Yeah. Well, one, a big part of, as I said earlier, the lessons that are created centrally to provide teachers to have those lessons includes that in elements of that for how students can work together with all students, respect, being aware of differences, and how do we celebrate those and not use those as distractions and use those as bullying opportunities. So there is specific lessons that take place at the elementary level. Those are built in through some of their time in the morning meetings. At the secondary level, there's a variety of opportunities where they have time with a teacher, that like the TA in the morning in some schools. In other words, every school has, and our executive director of student services has been meeting with the principals to make sure that they have some time built into the day, whatever it might look like. Again, it looks different to secondary, to provide those direct lessons to students, to thinking about those issues about inclusivity, making sure we're understanding and celebrating each other's differences, and making sure we're creating environments where we're being respectful to one another. At the same time, we do have lessons that we have for students to one, be aware when bullying is occurring amongst others, and how do you step in as an ally and a support for students that might be bullied. And then two, if you are feeling like you're bullied, what do you do? What are the steps you take? Who do you speak to? We have the online form that parents and students can fill out, because we've heard feedback, before previously, that students don't feel comfortable sometimes going to an adult. But that is all part of another effort where we're continuing to look at making sure we have trusted adults in every school. That's a charge that our principals have been working on, in terms of what environments are they creating, how can they create that environment in a way that students feel safe and welcome, not just in the classroom, but in the school overall. Because oftentimes that's where we've heard and we've received bullying concerns and complaints. It is at lunchtime, outside in the yard, outside in the playground, often in PE. We've seen it too, a couple of things. So how do we create that, not just in the general ed classrooms at that point?
Thank you. The 2022 model policies. What is APS's plan to guarantee the safety and rights of transgender and non-binary students and students with gender dysphoria, which is recognized as a disability under the ADA, given the proposed model policies? Will APS pass a resolution similar to the Richmond School Board, rejecting the model policies and protecting transgender and non-binary students?
Well, what I will say is that we have been firm and are continuing to say that we're going to be following our own discrimination policies and our PIP that are in place. So we have that, which does protect and guarantees the rights of all students in that. And so that's something we're committed to do. We've not yet seen the final. I'm sure there won't be a whole lot of changes, but we've not yet seen the final model policies that should be coming out anytime soon, I suppose, because the comment period just closed on the 26th. Once that is finalized, what we did see in the model policy that was put forth was saying that we needed to make sure we were adhering to state law, federal law, et cetera. Well, in my mind, federal law supersedes state model policy, and the ADA is very clear in some of the areas you described about the disability being recognized. That's an ADA federal law. So if model policy in some ways, in my mind, is very in conflict, and it's asking us to do one thing, but yet saying follow the law. Well, we are going to follow the law first and foremost. Second of all, we are going to continue to uphold our discrimination policy, which we were I was not here at the time, but I was in Fairfax and I saw from afar and admired it from afar that Arlington was the first to do the PIP related to supporting our transgender non-binary students. So that's still in place. In terms of a resolution, that would be something the school board has to decide. I don't want to speak on their behalf. That's a school board resolution, but I'll speak what I can say in my part is the policy, and the PIP is something that we're going to continue to follow and we're in alignment with the federal law in our PIP and policy.
Thank you. This next question falls under supplies and assistive technology. Every year, as part of the SEPTA mini grants process, SEPTA receives many requests for supplies such as adaptive seating, sensory items, light tables, etc., and other supplies that SEPTA understands should be part of the regular school supplies. If they're not, then SEPTA understands that this assistive technology should then be provided through HasTech. How does APS ensure, A, that all teachers and staff know about the available supplies and assistive technology and the process for requesting these supplies? B, available supplies are equitable from one school to the next. C, that principals use discretionary funds in a way that is equitably beneficial to students with disabilities from school to school. And D, APS has an accurate accounting of the funds needed to cover adaptive supplies.
I'm going to ask Heather and Kelly, maybe you can speak more to this one. Those are a lot of good questions and details that I know that you're closely aligned to. So can one of you please help with that one? Heather or Kelly?
Sorry. Yeah. So we certainly have a good sized budget in our office for assistive technology, and there's a very specific process that an IEP team goes through to sorry, I have a child walking behind me, to look at what assistive technology needs a student requires. And I think that that's an important word. You know, we have to look at what they require to access the curriculum. And then there are other assistive technology, kind of nice to have features that it helps a student, but they might not require it. And so sometimes I think that we, you know, might hear, well, I wish we had more of these in my school. And those are kind of nice to have, but we have to look at, in terms of under IDEA, the process for assistive technology and what that student actually requires in order to access their learning. In terms of principals using their own discretionary funds, you know, our schools do have some discretionary funds that they are able to use. You know, I think when we get to the word equitable, it doesn't mean the same. It means like what is needed at that school for their kids. And so, you know, principals may decide to use some of their funds to purchase additional fidgets or additional flexible seating, where another school might choose to use it in a different way. As of right now, we don't manage that centrally. We certainly can consult with schools if they're looking for additional ideas or strategies to look for ways to support students. And we don't have a central report that can filter out accurate spending for adaptive supplies. They're under different cost centers of, you know, school materials or you know, I'm not sure of all the cost centers, but we don't have like a central report that is solely dedicated to the look at for adaptive supplies. So that's some of it. It's certainly something near and dear to our heart, but we do have to make sure that we use our funding for what is absolutely required for our students. And Heather, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not.
No, I think you covered it. Sometimes people apply for SEPTA grants before they even come to our office. So you may see things coming to you that have not even been requested for funding through us. So sometimes teachers will ask for things that they just assume may not be available. But we definitely have been working very closely with our student support coordinators or related service providers to make sure if there are things that students need, that we make them available.
Great, thank you both, Kelly and Heather. I think that's a good time to just take a pause real quick to switch with Victoria and Morgan. Okay. Transportation. What is the criteria for determining which students ride a special education bus? Why does APS have SPED and Gen Ed students segregated in transportation? Based on the Virginia regulations, there's nothing requiring separate buses for SPED students. Certainly, a student who needs an accessible bus needs the appropriate bus assigned, but why can't general education students also ride that bus? If inclusion is beneficial in the classroom, why isn't it also practiced on the buses? In a time of staff and financial shortage, it also seems like a major waste of resources to unnecessarily allocate separate buses. Can APS integrate buses? Can someone explain how? This is a question after it, so I'll let you sort of talk about that first.
So in terms of determining which students ride a special education bus, that really again goes back to the IEP team working closely to understand what are the students' transportation needs. Is there any equipment or any physical needs in terms of boarding a bus? Particularly, you know, our special education buses are smaller, they're lower to the ground, they have additional equipment supports for some students. There's also sometimes consideration for students who might need a smaller bus in terms of the number of riders on the bus. Our larger general buses have, you know, many students, and there are some times where there are students brought through the IEP process or is determined that that large of a setting on a bus is not appropriate. But I will say that not all special, there currently is integration because we do have a lot of special education students who are riding the general ed buses. They do not need those specialized chair lifts or the safety restraints, or again, that smaller environment. The other thing, of course, we know sometimes is determined through IEP process that some students need an additional adult. So we have this additional bus aids that sometimes are on there to provide. Again, it's often accessibility is often the issue and the concern. Our current fleet that we have right now does not have many of those abilities in the larger general ed buses for some of those things. So our current fleet is for the special ed smaller buses with those additional chair lifts, specialized safety restraints, etc. Although we do have some chair lifts on the larger buses, and we have students who are in wheelchair that do ride the general ed bus at times. So that's a big consideration in terms of why we do that and how we do that. And then when you think about the special ed buses, we do have some general ed students who ride those. Those would only be under our policy, the siblings of those students. And so families with siblings can request, if their child is needed to ride in a special education bus, that their non-special education sibling ride with them. And we do have many of those that take place right now.
So the last question, I think, follows up to that, which is, can someone explain how a child transitions from riding special education transportation to be a regular bus rider? What is the criteria and the process?
So that would be through the IEP team, and the process would be for them to identify and just be clear that that's appropriate for them to be able to. There's no need for the physical restraint or the chair lift or any of those things that are sometimes necessary for some students. So it is an IEP or a 504, because sometimes it's a 504. So some students riding the special ed bus are not students with IEP, they have a 504 because it's a physical need for a boarding or deboarding a bus. So that would be contacting the school and requesting an IEP update meeting to change the transportation or to consider a different form.
Great, thank you. Conduct and discipline. Some APS schools have bought into the newer enlightened approach to discipline, while others have not. What is APS doing to ensure that all schools in APS comply with the new student conduct and discipline policies?
So our new Office of School Climate and Culture, which I referenced earlier, they are doing a regular training of all school leaders, all principals, assistant principals, monthly training on that. They've also developed a new framework for the code of conduct for principals and assistant principals, and then they're working with their teachers to be clear on what that looks like. That new office is also now doing a weekly review of all disciplinary infractions and determine, are they in alignment with the code of conduct? And if they're not, that office is working directly with those schools to correct what some of those errors may have been, or again, misunderstandings may have been, educate on that. The Office of School Climate and Culture, for the first time also now this year, they've never done this, they are visiting schools weekly. They go out to schools to go and sit and understand and look at the data, see what's going on. They're also working very, very closely with students who are referred to them for a severe infraction in the code of conduct that have to go to a central office meeting. They now set up a plan of action where they, the Office of School Climate and Culture, follow that student through, meet with them and their parents. They do a meeting with the parents, and then they identify a plan where they're actually going through and meeting regularly to track and monitor, make sure they're not getting into additional consequences. Because sometimes we've seen many, one example, one of the most egregious ones I heard of last year, one student who was suspended, 8 times in 2 months. That's not providing that child any support in terms of following our code of conduct. Then we need to make sure, what are we doing? What are the supports? So now that office is doing that. And then also really working with that office, bringing together Office of Academics, the student services, to really do some cross training around what is in the code of conduct, looking carefully at our discipline policies to make sure that they are clear, and that if they are clear, then how they're being implemented. And that happens really at the school level.
Thank you. COVID-19 mitigation. Currently, our school has students on day 6 of their COVID-19 diagnosis, eating in the cafeteria and the classrooms with no option for outdoor lunch due to lack of staffing. This is a violation of CDC and VDH guidelines. As a mother of a child on chemotherapy, I ask, what is APS doing to ensure high-risk students, and all students for that matter, are protected from contracting COVID-19 from a student returning to school on day 6? What is APS doing to become compliant with the CDC guidelines?
Well, in terms of the guidelines, we have, met with our health director and we followed it. We do believe we're following the guidelines, which do say after day 6 through 10, if the student does not have symptoms, and we remind, when they test positive, we send return guidance to families to make it very clear that they are not to return with symptoms on day 6. But if they do not have symptoms, they can return on day 6 wearing a mask through day 10. If they are not, now we have the option in Virginia, which is not directly in alignment with CDC and VDH guidance, but it is the state law where families can opt out. So Virginia, though, the Department of Health did put a measure in that say we can shorten their ability to do that by having 2 negative tests 48 hours apart. And so that is in alignment with CDC and VDH guidance. So in other words, we do believe we're putting that in place. The barrier, I think, what the question asked about was lunchtime. And so at lunchtime, if schools are not able to do outdoor lunch, even though we have provided resources in terms of funding, we've told every school if they need more resources to hire monitors, let us know. In some cases, I know of 1 or 2 schools that said they don't have anybody that's willing to work. They have the resources to pay them, but they don't have. And what the guidance has been and what we've received from the health department is that the doors and the windows in the cafeteria, if they know the students, should be opened during meal times. They should have the fan placed nearby to improve ventilation. We've given additional fans for that purposes. And if not, we've told principals to let us know. And then we also are reminding, and those students should be sitting with distance from others. So that is what we're attempting to do. And that is what we're following in terms of the policy, not policy, the guidelines from VDH and CDC.
Okay, thank you. How are COVID protocols being enforced and monitored, in particular to ensure safety and health of students with disabilities and immunocompromised who have been left to their own devices to protect themselves? And who is responsible for enforcing these protocols, like testing the air purifiers, looking that bus windows are open, ensuring COVID positive students are masking on day 6 or 10 through 10? And what is the process for correcting failure to follow these protocols?
So a couple of layers to your question. The first part is that in terms of how is it being monitored and things of that nature. So we do have our COVID team centrally, our clinic staff who are working together with the school principals. And we are making sure that we're sending home any students home with those illnesses that are COVID related or any of those symptoms. And then it is required, and this is in alignment with CDC recommendations, that then they have to provide a negative test before returning back to school. So that's one big measure in terms of what we're doing to try and enforce and monitor any COVID issues, is that we are requiring them that they bring back the negative test, which is in alignment with the guidance that we've been given. We've also continued, and it's a preventative measure, but we're continuing to do the weekly in-school testing and encourage families to do that so that they can get that free and staff. And we have staff that do that, because that obviously is another preventative measure to help us identify when someone may be asymptomatic, for example. We have the test kits that are free and available for families and students upon request. If they want to do it more than just the weekly version, we have those available. So that's what we're continuing to do there. And in terms of a student who may be immunocompromised and may have additional concerns, they may not be the one with COVID, but they're concerned about that. We do have the ability, and this has taken place a few times, for the IEP or the 504 plan to put a process in place to help protect their health and safety. And that team works directly then with that child's medical provider to get information to that team to determine what is specific needs and concerns are related to the immunocompromised, why they're immunocompromised. And so they look closely at the information from the medical doctor to make a decision about any other measures beyond what I just said, which are more generally for everyone, to see are there specific supports that can be put in place physically for those students. Remember about the rest of your question. I think you also asked about who's responsible for enforcing all those different protocols. Well, for things that are related to facilities, our facilities department is responsible, our assistant superintendent of facilities and operations, her and her team are checking to make sure there's, and air purifiers, the bus windows, all of those things. That's something that they are in charge of making sure. Obviously, the school administration, the principals and assistant principals will be responsible for making sure that those students return with the negative results to their clinics, and also anyone who should be wearing a mask, require them to wear a mask unless they opt out now. So that's generally what we're doing. I think that was, did I answer all your part of your question? It was multiple parts, so I want to make sure I got it all.
I think the last part, we could say part C, what is the process for correcting failures to follow protocols?
So the process would definitely be that we would make sure that depending on what it was, if it was a school principal, that they would correct, following up with the staff, documenting that. If it's the facilities folks, that we're documenting that and following up with the corrective measures there. And again, it's like I've said before many times, is the issue of why something not being followed lack of awareness, lack of information, or lack of resource, or is it somebody who's just not following and being neglectful? So depending on which one of those it is, it's dealt with accordingly. Obviously, if it's more resources that are needed or more education, that will be provided. And if it's beyond that, then there is a human resource process for those that are just neglectfully not doing what they should be doing.
Okay, thank you. We noted actually that the Qualtrics dashboard had been updated recently, so appreciate that the raw data has been put back. So we just want to amend the question here,
Okay.
just that it be communicated when the Qualtrics dashboards getting changed or updated, or things getting back added, to communicate that to the APS community.
Understood. Thank you.
Wait a second. The last part of that, though, it is still a question. How does APS define a COVID outbreak? What will APS do to guarantee that families are notified of outbreaks? And who in APS leadership is accountable for this reporting?
So we do not define a COVID outbreak by APS. We follow the VDH definition, and that is very, very specific to say that, and it's changed over time, but we follow exactly what it says. And that is that 3 or more cases linked to a place within 14 days. So for example, if 3 cases were in the same classroom within 2 weeks, that would be an outbreak. Excuse me for a second. Excuse me. So yeah, that's the policy that we follow from VDA. Who was accountable for reporting this? If there's an outbreak, first of all, the Arlington County Public Health Division is the one that would be identifying the potential outbreak following that guidance. So they would call it an outbreak. They identify it through us, and they notify our COVID team, who notifies the school principal, and then they're responsible, the school principal, for informing the school community via a school talk when there's an outbreak at the school. But it's not something APS determines. It's not our own rules. It's determined by the local county health department, following the definition I just described a minute ago that VDH has set forth as the definition.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask 2 clarifying questions on this COVID section? So is APS currently allowing students to opt out of masking from days 6 to 10?
We are required by law to do so, so yes.
And is APS currently notifying all COVID outbreak cases
Yes, we're required, as I just said, if the health department has identified as an outbreak per that definition of VDH, which is 3 or more cases in one place within 14 days, then yes, we are required, and we have, I know of a couple, notified the school community via a school doc, and that comes from the principal.
Thank you. The 5-year plan. How has the pandemic impacted the Student Support Action Plan based on the PCG program review, aka the 5-year action plan? And what adjustments will be made so APS can recalibrate where we are in relation to where we need to be? And second to that, will APS provide a status update to the 2019 program evaluation for students with disabilities and those receiving interventions?
So I'll take the second part first, and I'm going to ask Heather and Kelly to talk about the first part.
Sure.
So we will have an update on the program evaluation. We have an annual monitoring report that's provided to the school board on this work, and it's scheduled for March. I forgot what, there's 2 meetings in March, but it's in March. And so that will be provided as a status update to the board and the community. For the first part of the 5-year plan, Heather and Kelly, you're right up in that, roll up your sleeves in that all the time. So I'll let you speak to that one.
Yeah, I will just say that we have continued to work towards our goals during the pandemic, and currently we have made a lot of movement towards our goals. I think that in the past year, if you've been watching school board meetings, you have seen the school board buy into many of the requests that we've had. You've seen support for budget requests. You've seen identification of barriers that we have identified as far as staffing and systemic things within APS. So I would not say that we have needed to recalibrate. We have been working very hard. We will be providing a status update in the 2019 program evaluation. We also provide status updates at the monthly ASAC meeting. So if anybody would like to attend those meetings, we provide updates on all of our goals and initiatives during that time. So I would say that we are in a very good place. We are looking forward to our next program evaluation, where we can see what things we need to continue to work on and what things would push us forward as far as our accomplishments thus far. So I'm not concerned about the 5-year plan.
And Heather, you may have said it and I just missed it, but when is the next evaluation?
So the last one was in 2019. So I would think by 2025, I'm not quite sure what the evaluation timelines are, but it typically occurs every 5 years. So I would think by 2025, we'd be talking about a new program evaluation.
Okay, thank you. I think we need to pause for a minute so we can switch to Victoria. Thank you. Model inclusion sites. Can you please provide a detailed update on the work being done at the model inclusion sites and specific plans, including a timeline for moving APS's work on inclusion going forward system-wide?
Heather, Kelly, can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are very fortunate that our superintendent and our school board supported many of our staffing requests, which included additional student support coordinators. We are almost fully staffed at all of our schools with full-time student support coordinators. So after reflecting on that and really being dedicated to building the coaching model with our student support coordinators, we have moved away from having just model sites, and we are building the capacity of all of our schools now simultaneously. We did not want to delay anything. It's essential that all of our schools continue to move forward in our inclusive practices, looking at our percentage of students that are spending 80% of their time in general education, 80% of the day. We know that that is not only going to happen with coaching, but that is a key piece. So we are working with all of our coordinators as well as continuously meeting with all of our administrators each month. Heather and I worked hard to begin a special education institute for our administrators last year. We received great feedback, was well received, and there was actually a desire and a ask for more this year. So we're continuing that, and this spring, we're taking a deep dive into some of our guidance documents on inclusive practices. So we feel like we're in a good place as a system to continue to move that work forward. And we know that we have the support of our superintendent as well as our school board to also relook at planning factors that haven't been updated since potentially the 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. So as we detail that plan over the next couple of years, we know that that will also support our schools in moving the work forward at each site. Heather, I don't know if you want to add on to that or anything. Oh, we may have lost her for a second.
Nope. All right, well, if she comes back on. The last question for tonight, unless there's more in the chat, but this one is, has APS ever considered creating a dual language immersion program for ASL and English at a pre-K and/or elementary school in Arlington? If not, do you think there would be a potential benefit in doing this, just like we do for the Spanish-English dual immersion? I saw that a school in Chesterfield is offering ASL English dual language immersion, and it appears to be a success.
In my time here, just short still, I'm not aware of that. I don't know, Heather and Kelly, if you're aware of any discussions around this, around dual language for ASL. I have not heard of any discussions at this time, or that's
No, we do not have any discussions about immersion. You know, we do offer ASL as a world language in our secondary schools. So the schools that have students with who are deaf and hard of hearing, who need interpreting, are able to communicate with other students who are participating in those world languages classes. So we have found that there are connections within the secondary schools, but we have not made any plans to have an immersion program.
All right, thank you. We are going to use every last second. We have these great resources available. We have two last questions from the chat. Last year, a question was asked about the ableism working group and whether that was going to resume. The answer was yes, but not sure when. Is there an update on that effort?
Heather and Kelly, do you have an update on that?
We don't have an update on that work, but we certainly can reach out to Dr. Otley's office to bring that topic back up and to see where we are with that.
Thank you. And last question, I will selfishly take advantage of the opportunity about AAC users. How are AAC services, the new coaching model, being evaluated after the closure of the communication program to ensure that all AAC users are receiving all the supports they need?
Kelly, Heather, thanks.
Sure. So I will let Kelly add on to this response because she works very closely with the AAC working group, but it has been amazing having AAC coaches in our schools. We have teachers, veteran teachers, who for years were intimidated by AAC devices, didn't know how to use them, didn't understand them, who are now really involved with their students, making sure that they're using their devices, communicating with them. We are finding AAC resources across school buildings and cafeterias and playgrounds, not always high tech, sometimes low tech, but it's a great opportunity for all of our teachers to learn how to work with students who are using these alternative communication devices or systems. We've seen great success with the coaches. We have not seen a need to go back to having a communication program. We think that embedding these supports within all of our schools, in all of our classrooms, with all of our teachers, with all of our students, it has been more beneficial than an AAC class. But I will defer to Kelly for last comments on that, because she has been working very closely with that group.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot of it. I meet on a regular basis with our AAC coaches. Even just one way we monitor the effectiveness is we look at growth from last year, and already for our October 10th professional learning, we had over 23 schools have staff that sent staff to get trained on how to support students using AAC. We have already tripled the amount of parent responses that are reaching out to our coaches to do parent training and looking at ways to support their children at home using AAC. As we are in towards the end of October, but we were in AAC Awareness Month, already looking and getting requests from staff on how else can staff build up their learning and stuff. So, we constantly look at those coaching referrals. And as Heather said, the biggest thing is when we see a shift in implementation, and we have already seen a significant shift in implementation in many of our staff. So these are all very promising things, and definitely a big sign that we are moving in the right direction.
There's another question. Can you? All right.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
There was a question in the chat that I'm going to tag on to that.
Yeah. Can you let parents know how to access the AAC coaches?
Sure. I can put our two coaches' emails in the chat, or do you want me to email it to you guys and you can push it out to the listserv? What would be best?
Why don't you put it in the chat, if you don't mind, Dr. Krug, because we'll be making all of this available tomorrow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, anyone can reach out to the PRC and they can connect you. They are very capable of accessing all of our resources. So if that's the easiest way for parents, they will be able to help you.
Wonderful. Well, we are super thankful for all of the hard work and tireless hours, Dr. Krug, Ms. Rossenbuscher, Dr. Duran, Kathleen and Gina at PRC, and we are really grateful to have spent this time chatting and learning so much tonight. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having us, and big kudos to Heather and Kelly for their leadership and in this work. Our students and our staff really are fortunate to have them leading the Office of Special Education. So thank you for all having me.
Thank you. One little plug, we do have November 10th at 7:30, our next meeting, and we do have special presenters for that, Beth Koss and Chris Fugay, and they are co-authors of a book called Inclusive Learning 365. And so it will be an engaging conversation and PTA meeting, so don't miss that. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. And I see LJ cheering. Go to bed, LJ.
Hi, buddy.